I remember when that picture was taken. It was in 1935 in the summer when some of my ancestors were down to visit me. Down to visit us. And they took the picture of us. And somehow, when they got home, they never developed.
Mm-hmm.
So
that was you and your brother.
We finally contacted them, and this is what actually happened. Somebody found the film in the camera, so they had it developed.
Yes.
Wow. And it was in a house, another house that they had bought, right? They had found it like in an attic or something, or a closet or something.
I don't know where, and I don't know where it was, but I think it was the Nereds or one of that family that lived in western Nebraska.
Mm.
And it was, but I remember when they were taking that picture. I was 16 years old then.
Wow.
My grandmother was the only person who actually knew that I was born and that I was Wenceslas Aloysius.
That was,
And that in Czech it was Václav Vojtěch, and that in English it was James Rose.
68th
When my
birthday, so it was
grandparents
20.
were first married,
7 years ago.
they bought the farm that we were on, that we lived on,
You owe me a
for
piece of
something like $500. And they had to live on that farm for 5 years
That's what you were saying.
in order to be able to keep the title. They bought it from
The railroad, you said.
Union Pacific, I believe it is.
It was land granted
Yeah.
to build the
But
railroad.
it was a homestead.
It's down to 20.
It was part of the land that the government gave to Union Pacific that they didn't need. So somehow they had the right to sell it, but it was handled as a homestead. So it was. They're part of the tradition of Nebraska. They were
1980s.
married in 83, was it?
Who?
1883?
1883. I think it was something like that. But anyway,
Listen,
they had to live there from the time they got the title, and they had no way to build a house. So what they did was to dig a cave in the side of the hill. One day, my grandmother opened
Okay,
the
we'll get you a glass of
door,
wine. I will get you a
and
glass of wine.
a rattlesnake fell on her head.
Oh, shit.
She didn't get bitten or anything like that, but they decided to move
That
on.
was when they decided.
But it was really, they were the first owners of that property. I was born on a farm nearby. It wasn't the same farm that they homesteaded, because my grandfather bought a farm nearby that at around 1910 or something like that, and it had a big orchard on it, an apple orchard. So what they did was to every fall, they'd had 20 acres of orchard property. They would load several cars with apples and drive them to the western part of the state. And he'd put the cars on a side rail, and he sold
We'll get you, Mom.
the apples for
They're looking for
$1
a glass.
Yeah.
for $1 a bushel. He had all of the cash that he earned
Right there.
from that, and the cash came in dollar coin.
Oh, so that was heavy.
He had big troubles trying to lug the dollar coins
That's funny.
back to Tobias. But because of this, he was able to buy 6 farms in the area.
Oh, wow.
So the one that Cousin Jane lives is the original.
It's the
one.
original one. Okay.
It was owned by 2 people before Cousin Jane inherited it.
Right.
My
Well,
grandfather and
Joe
my
and Uncle Joe.
brother.
Mhm.
And it was noted for being one of the few properties that had a very low turnover in the area.
Right.
I think in Saline County it was the only farm. that had been owned by two owners.
Interesting.
They had a piano that had been a roller piano.
Yeah.
That they had gotten from a circus that passed through.
Oh, cool.
And they sang with the piano.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was what they did for entertainment.
Wow.
And you'd have this roll of paper that had cutouts on it,
Yeah.
and it would activate various keys, and it rolled and played the song. But I think that
It is.
Uncle Bill, after grandfather died, stole it one night,
Uh-oh.
and Mary had always hated him for this
Oh,
because
no.
she was supposed to get it.
Aw.
But one night he just went into the house after grandfather died
You got enough?
and stripped it out,
Aw.
and nobody ever asked anything about it. You saw the stuff in Uncle Joe's house, but you know, he assumed that he was the oldest in the family and he was entitled. My grandparents lived in town and they had electricity because of the town.
Oh.
So I used to, you know, I'd stay at their house for a while, and so that's while I was in high school, I would stay in town, and we would have electricity there, and then we'd go out on the farm, and we had
Nothing.
No electricity.
Yeah, no electricity. We got electricity on the farm in 1949. We'd go on to visit Joe and Rita.
I was out there.
Yeah.
The rooster chased
Barb
me.
was there.
I was just
Jean
this
was
big and
there.
this great big mean rooster.
And we waited until sundown, and then my brother had Rita, his wife, throw a switch on the outside, and every room had the lights on. He had done the wiring of the whole house.
Wow.
So, and he turned all the switches on. So when she flipped on that switch, it just lit up like a Christmas tree.
When I was in high school, we had one of the first TVs, very elementary TV, but one of my classmates was Kathleen McGillicuddy, and she was the granddaughter of Connie Mack. If any of you remember
Oh, yeah.
the Philadelphia A's from many years ago, he was an owner of the Philadelphia A's, very active in the Philadelphia area thing. And anyhow, one of the very first programs on TV was the Philadelphia A's baseball games. And you could turn it on when there was nothing else on except test patterns and the games. And one of the second things was a Milton Berle show.
Was it like-
Uncle Milty.
Milton Berle.
Uncle Milty. Milton Berle.
Those are the two things that I remember when, but 23 hours out of the day, there was nothing but a test pattern.
Well, there was Fibber McGee and Molly,
Well, that came a little later though.
who came in, I guess, a little. It was
We
a
went to the
Buick
bar for to get
A
your-
Buick.
that my father bought for $5. Somebody had it in for repairs, and he couldn't pay the cost of the repairs.
The $5.
So he lost the car, and my father heard about it, so he got it for $5.
Excellent. Is that
Actually, the repairs cost $25.
the car?
So
So
he figured that the blacksmith figured that he'd be $5 better off if he sold it, so
Yeah.
he sold it. And it used to go downhill 25 miles an hour.
Hmm.
Uphill something like 15 or
Sure.
I think there was something wrong with the setup. But anyway, it had no brakes,
Oh my gosh.
so every time I drove into town, I would have to look for a place that had a curve. My dad had two cars that were Dodge.
Oh.
The Dodge was a nice car,
Mhm.
but he kept one for repairs for the other.
Oh.
That's what a lot of people
That's smart.
Sure, that makes sense.
After I got I got through high school, I went to the university. And from there on in, I had no car. I had to thumb my way down the, and
Yeah.
it worked. It worked. It
Yeah.
was amazing. You know, when you looked like a college student,
Oh, yeah.
everybody felt rather
Yeah,
safe.
then, yeah.
Back then, yeah.
But it was 60 miles from Lincoln. I never missed a trip back home or into Lincoln.
What was your first car like when you got your own
Oh,
car?
it was a stripped down Chevrolet, 2-door, and it cost $1,300. I remember that. And here I was, I hadn't driven a car for years, and in those days you had to make a reservation with a car dealer
Oh, to see the cars?
to get a car, and it took about a year and a half for them to supply me with a car because of the war.
Yeah,
And
47
everything.
or so.
Oh, wow.
And at that time, I actually moved from Toledo, which
Toledo
was
to
the town that
Marcus Hook.
I was working in, to Philadelphia.
Mm.
So I took a train in to Philadelphia on Saturday,
Amazing.
and I paid for the car, and then I got in the car and I drove. But meanwhile, by the way, I had gotten a license because I had a friend that had a car.
Uh-huh.
And I practiced a little bit on it and applied, and I got my license. So everything was fine.
While he was getting out there, I was being born in Pittsburgh. He was transferred.
Yeah.
And so my mother stayed with her parents
parents,
in
yeah.
Pittsburgh
Oh,
while he was moving and getting things set up.
oh wow.
And the demo, we couldn't take a train to Philadelphia because they were all reserved for the troop demobilization.
Oh.
yeah.
So we took Agony Airlines. I flew first at the age of 3.
You flew Allegheny in 1947.
No, it was a different way of life.
Mm-hmm.